works. Broad day nigga get hit. Ain't nobody gonna do it.
What's good, everybody? What's good? It's your boy, Cardinal Bud Crawford. And we're back for another one. Alright, y'all. New topic. Let's burn this real fast. New topic. Not a super fight. Terence Bud Crawford is not popular enough to make the Errol Spence Undisputed fight. Woo-wee. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by it's not a super fight and Terence Crawford is not popular enough? Well, over the past week, there's been a lot of talk, man. A lot of talk. And I've been checking out a few videos, just, trying to get everybody's feel for what's really going on. So, checking out some videos earlier, and I heard someone speaking, I'll leave his name out, about Floyd Mayweather and what Floyd Mayweather had to say about this fight. Because I hadn't heard exactly what he had said about the fight yet. But listening to what he had said and his breakdown of what Floyd was saying, basically what he was saying was this fight needs more time to brew and stew before it's actually made. Now, I've been telling y'all, I don't think it's going to happen in 22. I think it's going to happen in 23. I've been telling y'all that that there may not be enough money surrounding the fight at the moment. I've been telling y'all that because of Terence Crawford's affiliation with ESPN, due to his former affiliation with Top Rank, that there are two different television companies trying to get a hold of the rights to the playbacks. So there are a lot of variables at play, not only just Terence Crawford not signing off on the fight. And a lot of these things are probably a culmination of why he's not signing off on the fight. But to be specific on one or two of those things, basically it not being a super fight at this point, and Terence Crawford not being popular enough to make the fight. Now, what I mean by it's not a super fight, because the money's not already there, it's not a super fight. And I know a lot of people are going to be, well, you got two superstar fighters, blah, blah, blah. That's not what makes it a super fight. What makes it a super fight is you have investors who are already willing to put up the money for both fighters so the fight can be made. Is what makes it, to me, a super fight. And super fights normally can go off without a hitch. Unless you're Floyd Mayweather, then you probably throw a bunch of your own monkey wrenches into the process. Or you're Terence Bud Crawford and you refuse to sign off on the fight for various different reasons. So this fight at the moment is not a super fight because they don't have the money to pay Terence Crawford what he wants. Now I've already stated that this was one of the problems. Now, another one of the problems is the fact that ESPN is still, I believe, tied in with Terence Crawford. Even though he's no longer with Top Rank, I believe he still has contractual obligations to fulfill with ESPN, and perhaps they want a portion of the TV rights, the playback rights to that fight, and they don't want him to sign off on the fight until they hash out what that factor is going to be. Now, should that be a determining factor for Terence Crawford not signing off on the fight? No, it shouldn't, because I don't think ESPN's hands should be that deep into the fight, even though they might, like I said, still have contractual obligations with Terence Crawford. I don't think those contractual obligations are so deep that they can stop Terence Crawford from signing. I believe that Terence Crawford's main holdup is money and fear of losing. Because if he loses that title belt, he's no longer the fighter he was before that fight. And then you have the factor of Terence Crawford just not being popular enough. You know, Terence Crawford up until this point has not been able to sell a pay-per-view on his own. Now we know just Errol Spence's name alone can carry a pay-per-view. He can put on a pay-per-view, his name alone, because we just saw that with the Ugas fight. His name alone can sell enough pay-per-views to make the fight profitable. Now, I don't think they're worried about the gate, because, once again, Errol Spence's name alone, if they did it in Texas, is enough to carry the fight. So I don't think they're worried about the gate. I think they're worried more about the fact of, can Terence Crawford's name help sell the pay-per-view enough for us to recoup our money so we're able to pay both of these guys $10 million plus. And I think that's one of the holdups that is out there, because I think that Terence Crawford wants $10 million plus. I'm pretty sure he wants the biggest payday of his life for this fight. And $5 million, he was already getting that from Bob Arum. He was getting that damn near guaranteed for Bob Arum. So it's not like PBC is going to just be able to, and Fox is just going to be able to offer Terence Crawford $5 million to make the fight. Now, on PBC's part, I think they're feeling like, well, you're not popular enough for us to pay you $10 million. Because we don't feel like that the pay-per-view is going to gross enough money just based off of Errol Spence's name alone carrying the fight to pay both of y'all upwards of $10 million. So let's just say, okay, and we know if they do get to the point where they're giving Terence Crawford 10, well, then you got to double it on Errol Spence's part. So he's getting 20. So you're talking about this fight has to generate over $30 million for it to be profitable for whoever's hosting the fight, whether it's PBC, Fox Sports, ESPN, if they have their hand in it. You know, that it has to generate at least $30 million for everybody to get paid back their money for putting the fight on. So I don't think Terence Crawford at this point is popular enough to generate that $30 million. I think, you know, Errol Spence can carry a fight and his name alone down in Texas can put enough butts in the seat to generate 15, maybe 20 million, but that would leave them somewhere around 10 to 15 million still in the hole that I don't think they feel comfortable enough that they can recoup off the pay-per-view numbers. Based off of Terence Crawford has never been able to sell his own fight. So if he can barely do 100,000 buys, and we know Errol Spence can do maybe 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 on a great night. So if they need to hit a 500,000 buy pay-per-view to make the fight profitable, and you can only get 200 out of Errol Spence, and you can only get 100,000 buys out of Terence Crawford, where you're still 200,000 pay-per-view buys in the hole, which would have generated that other 10 to 15 million dollars they need for the fight to be profitable. So at this point, it's not even a super fight. You know what made Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather a super fight was the money was already there, and both of those guys were selling pay-per-views at a seriously high number. Now, you know, I think that fight did somewhere around 1 million buys on pay-per-view. So it generated nearly over $100 million. So, you know, can Terence Crawford, and there people are saying is Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence as big as Pacquiao Mayweather? No, it's nowhere near. If they can't even get these guys over the $10 million hump purse a piece, it's nowhere near worth what Pacquiao Mayweather was worth. You know, that fight alone, you know, the pay-per-view alone might have done, you know, close to, you know, 40, 50, $60 million by itself, not including the gate and the replays and all the other stuff that goes along with selling fights, you know, and concession and all the other stuff that's generated off of selling fights. So nowhere near is that Terence Crawford fight close to the Maypac fight. It's nowhere near that. So I think the problem at the moment, along with Terence Crawford being a little afraid of losing his title, losing his O, not wanting to sign off on a smaller purse split, there are factors of, you know, it's not a super fight, and Terence Crawford isn't popular enough to sell this fight to a high enough level that, you know, the parties that are going to be doing the pay-per-view rights are not going to recoup their money. So, if, like, once again, if they're looking to generate, you know, 500,000 buys, somewhere around 500,000 buys on pay-per-view from this fight, and like I said, you can only get 200 out of Errol, which is really high. You can only get somewhere around 100 out of Terence. You're missing 200,000 pay-per-view buys, and you're not going to get that out of Terence Crawford. So I think it's a matter of, you know, we know there's a contract out there, but it's a matter of what can this fight actually generate, you know, because if Terence Crawford wants a set amount of money to sign off on the contract, and then the people that are fronting the money for the fight realize there's not enough money involved in the recruiting process to make the fight, we're never going to get this fight, you know, because, I mean, at this point, let's just say this. Okay, so we don't get it in 2022. What does Terence Crawford do between now and the you know, the first quarter, second quarter of 2023 to make himself more popular, to be able to generate another at least another 100,000 to 150,000 pay-per-view buys? And to me, his only other option other than fighting Errol Spence to make himself more popular, because he's going to have to face up with another boxer that can make him popular. You know, he's got to have to face up with another boxer who, if he beats that boxer, he's going to gain a portion of that fan base, and it'll make him more popular. It'll make the Spence Crawford fight worth more because it will sell more pay-per-views. Now, what names are out there that Terence Crawford can face up with to put him in position to be able to generate more pay-per-view buys? Well, there's, to me, only one real name, because even if you face him up with Jaron Ennis, he's not popular enough to generate new pay-per-view buys. You would either have to face him up with a Charlo so that Terence Crawford can get a portion of the Charlo fan base. You would have to take him and face him up with a Josh Taylor. Maybe you can get him to face up with Josh Taylor at 147 so he gets a portion of that UK fan base. Or, you know, you got Manny Pacquiao still out there, who is instant fame if you beat him. You know, well, you know, I take that back. Ugas should became instantly famous off the fact that he beat Manny Pacquiao, but he didn't. So, you know, there's a question mark there for me, even about him trying to go fight Manny Pacquiao. With that, put him over the hump. If he went and fought Pacquiao and beat Pacquiao, would he gain a portion of that Pacquiao fan base? Because we know Ugas didn't. Who else's name is out there that he could face up with at this point? I don't even know, to tell you the truth. Other than Josh Taylor, I think if he fought Josh Taylor at 147 and beat Josh Taylor, I do think he would gain another 50 to 60, maybe 70,000 pay-per-view buys for the Errol Spence Jr.'s fight. But that's not enough to get around that 500,000 buy mark. So if he was to face off with Pacquiao, would he be able to get enough of that Pacquiao fan base if he beat him, to actually push this fight around 500,000 pay-per-view buys? And I don't think, at this point, I don't even think him facing off with Pacquiao would get him there. Unless he faced off with Pacquiao and did something really miraculous, like knocked him out cold like Marquez did, then I don't think that would even give him enough to push him over that hump. So the only other option would be for Terence Crawford to take a pay cut in the first fight and try to recruit and try his best to beat Errol Spence. That way he can recoup his money in the rematch. To me, that is the biggest holdup at this point. It's not a super fight, and Terence Crawford is not popular enough to sell this fight, unfortunately. It's just not going to happen that way. So y'all let me know what y'all think about that, man. I think personally both of these guys are superstar fighters, but one of them is just not popular enough to sell the fight at the moment. You know, I think that Terence Crawford needs something to get him over the hump to make this fight a lot more sellable on TV. And I don't know who he faces up with at this point to make that happen. Let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section. It's your boy Cardinal Bud Crawford, and I think I'm going to end it there for now. We got the police rolling around, so I got to get out of here. Do y'all think Terence Crawford is popular enough to sell this fight? And do you think that he needs, or do you think he needs to do something else to actually sell this fight, for him to actually make enough money to sign off on this fight? Me personally, I don't think he's popular enough at this point, and I don't think it's a super fight at this point. Hit that like button for me. Please subscribe. Hit me up on social media, all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube's. It's your boy, and we are
We wanna see that paperwork. Paperwork.